Thank you very much.
Should I stay on this?
Please.
My name is Farbol Guyagi. I've got a question, actually a comment about the means of change that you're referring to. In essence, you're saying it's either regime versus the people versus the regime. I just want to take you back to two examples in recent history where well-established political system has changed. That is, in the case of Russia and China. Who would have guessed back in 1985 that either of these systems would change, and how did it change? It's well-established, and somebody from outside within the regime initiated change. There was very little confrontation amongst the people of China and Russia with their. And so that's the premise of my comment. You mentioned there are two ways to improve the situation of Iran. How about a third way? Would you think of Iran as a non-homogeneous regime in a way that there would be elements within the system who would help to change? I know it sounds, strange, but elements within the system that would peacefully and gradually help to bring necessary changes. Have you considered that option, that third option?
No, of course I have. I mean, if you're talking about the reform movement, is that pretty much what you're talking about?
I'm not talking about movement, lack of leadership in this case. Not necessarily movements come, it's too politicized. I'm talking about individuals within the system. I'm talking about Gorbachevs within the system.
Right. Well, first of all, I think it's not a fair comparison to talk about the demise of the Soviet establishment and compare it to this regime, because I think that much more was done by the Western free world to put an end to the Russian Empire, as opposed to trying to put an end to the Islamic Republic of Iran, number one. Number two, I think that in terms of perestroika and glasnost, it was well beyond the control of the Politburo of the Communist Party in Russia, as opposed to a regime where the supreme leader pretty much controls every aspect of Iranian governance, and every decision from the judiciary to the legislation to the security forces. There is no way that you can bring about change from within attempting to reform the system. The problem and the stumbling block is here. In the last case, there was an attempt. They imprisoned the leadership. They silenced all the voice. They raped people in prison. All we have to look is what they did with the latest attempt, shall we say, which gave rise to the Green Movement. I wish it could have been done that way, but it cannot be done that way. What I'm saying is that, of course, there have to be elements from within, and I think in a way they are, in the sense that they have given up on the idea of reforming this regime and they want to take a step beyond this regime. In that way, they can be on a convergence path with those of us who all along have argued about the fact that this theocracy is an obstacle to democracy, and the only alternative to this regime can be a parliamentary secular democracy. And if we can see more eye to eye today with former reformists who don't believe anymore in reforming, sure, there are elements from within that can help. The problem that I have is that if you don't define the red line, and there's only one, is between those who argue that we can still maintain this regime within this constitution and its nature and try to change it, and those who say this is not going to work and it's a waste of time. Not that we're going to fight them, but I don't think we can really see eye to eye with that group. So if there are elements from within who understand that, of course we need to have their participation, but in a way that could ultimately bring a collapse of the regime, so we can then get to that open atmosphere of political freedom, so political parties can form, so the media can be free, so political prisoners can be free, to have a first chance at really conducting a meaningful process of democratic decision making. I don't think this regime is going to voluntarily give that right to us. If tomorrow Khamenei wakes up and says, mea culpa, I give up, great. I'll be on the first flight back to Tehran and exercise my right as a citizen to free speech. But you and I know it's not going to happen. So I don't know, if that's the aim of your question, it depends. It depends what element from within wants to do what. All I know is that thinking that this regime will ever allow for a meaningful change to happen, I think is now wishful thinking more than reality.